The O'Reilly Factor from Boston is on tonight.
I want to work with Congress whenever and wherever I can, but we're not going to wait. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and that's all I need.
Looks like there's a war between the Republicans and President Obama, and he may very well speak to that in tomorrow night's State of the Union address. But does the president have any power left? Britt Hume will analyze.
The Democrats, one of their big issues is they've concocted and says Republicans are committing a war on women. And I think really the media seems to have given President Clinton a pass on this.
Senator Rand Paul calling out the Democrats over the war on women. Juan and Mary Catherine have some thoughts.
Bridgegate, did that ensnarl you at all?
It's horrible. Absolutely horrible.
And Waters' World takes us to the turbulent world of New Jersey, where Governor Christie is struggling to hang on.
Government is a business like every other business. I do for you, you do for me. I take care of you, take care of me.
Caution. You are about to enter the no-spin zone from Massachusetts. The Factor begins right now. Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly reporting tonight from Boston. Thanks for watching us. Civil war in Washington. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Tomorrow night, the president will give his 5th State of the Union address. And Talking Points predicts many Americans will not pay attention. That's because the USA is stuck. Little is getting done in D.C. And the folks are getting sick and tired of the log jam. Mr. Obama has promised that if Congress does not cooperate more with him, that he'll sign a bunch of executive orders getting stuff done by fiat. Well, that's not going to make many people happy. At this point in his presidency, President Clinton had signed 238 executive orders. President Bush the younger, 198. And President Obama, 167. So you can see that Barack Obama hasn't been crazy with the executive order business. But that was then. Now the president's under siege. All the polls show his job approval rating low and his credibility has been damaged. A new poll by the Associated Press asked Americans who tried signing up for health insurance on the Obamacare website what they thought of the experience. Just 8% said the website works well. 29% somewhat well. 53% not well at all. That 8% number is a disaster. After all the money spent to roll out Obamacare, 8%? So tomorrow night, the president has a very difficult task trying to convince Americans that his administration will solve vexing problems going forward. One of the big concerns with the president's tenure so far has been his inability to persuade Congress to give him a break. Mr. Obama should remember Steven Spielberg's Lincoln movie. That film is essentially about what President Lincoln had to do to convince a Congress suspicious of him to pass anti-slavery legislation. Lincoln did all kinds of things, some of which bordered on illegal, to get the slavery deal done. Even if Barack Obama uses executive orders, his presidency will not be successful until he reaches some kind of détente with Congress. And that is an exceedingly difficult task because Republicans smell blood in the water and are in no mood to expand the federal government the way the president wants. Just today, there's an article in the New York Times that says the Republican Party may well win the Senate next November. So alert Americans know that Barack Obama is not in a good place. His job tomorrow night to begin to turn it all around. And that's a memo. Now for the top story tonight reaction, joining us from Washington, Fox News chief political analyst Britt Hume. So I bet you agree with that memo 100%, right, Hume?
I pretty well do agree with that memo. I think, that he has a tall order. I don't know how much he can really do in a speech. These State of the Union addresses tend to be, they make the news for a few days, but they tend quickly to be forgotten. And a long legislative agenda is not what he apparently has in mind. He's talking about what he can do with a pen and a phone. And the truth of the matter is, Bill, the cold reality of it is, with a pen and a phone, there's not all that much you can do. I mean, presidents don't go to Congress for legislation because they enjoy it. They go because they must to get the authority to do anything big. And he doesn't think he's going to get that, and he probably can't do anything big.
He's threatening. He's threatening to do immigration reform with executive orders. He's threatening to do some more stimulus stuff by executive orders. Now, I have never...
If you could do that, if you could really do that, then why would you ever bother with Congress? The reason you do it is because you can't do much without legislative authority. And
well, then why is he doing this at all? Why is he making a threat and Jay Carney following it up in the press conferences?
Well, you could call it a threat, or to his supporters, they might call it a promise not to be a completely moribund president while, the rest of the 3 years that remain in his term click by. So, looked at in that vein, you don't want to look like you're just completely passive. So you say, I'll do this and I'll do that, but there's just limits to how much you can do. Now, look, there's some things he can do without legislation. In other words, Congress leaves a huge portion of the job of putting laws into effect to the executive branch and its agencies. And regulatory burdens can be imposed, regulations can be put into place. The president will have a more friendly U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia now that he's been able to get Congress or Senate to do away with that likelihood of a filibuster on those things. On the nominees for that court, he can put friendly members there. That will give him some support. But I still don't think it's going to add up to very much.
All right. Now, you read the article in the New York Times today. Very unusual for that paper to do that. Saying that, the math right now says the Republicans could very well take the Senate. So if that happens, the Senate and the House will remain Republican, then the president's, he's a lame duck, is he not, for 2 years?
Well, no, look, he'll be a lame duck, but remember, no president is ever irrelevant. A president there's one thing he can do with a pen, and that's he can veto legislation. So he's in no danger of being overrun by a wave of Republican-sponsored legislation
but he's not gonna,
to undo big pieces
of his
agenda and so on. Well,
it's going to be all
true,
negative. You can't do this. It's not going to be anything positive going forward. I can't imagine a Republican Congress, and correct me if I'm wrong, at this juncture, 5 years into his term, I can't imagine Republicans even trying to give him anything. I mean, they just don't like him.
Look at it. Well, they disagree with him, and the disagreements between the two parties right now in the Congress in particular are quite profound. But, for example, he wants to see unemployment benefits extended. Republicans would give him that if he would agree to offsets savings in other parts of the budget to cover the expense of it.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do that. So that's the nature of the stalemate. And look, you talked about the horse trading that Abraham Lincoln did to get controversial legislation passed in his era. This president has not been very good at that or very willing to do it. And he would have to give up things that, do things he and his party really don't want to do to get some of the things they want. And so far, that isn't the way it's going.
Greater good. I still think that when I see the president on Saturday, but I know he did watch the Lincoln movie, but that's what it was all about. Lincoln had to do all kinds of stuff.
I'll be interested to hear you ask him about that and what he says.
All right. Resume, everybody. Next on the rundown, extremely controversial remarks by Senator Rand Paul tying President Clinton in with the war on women. Later, Bernie Goldberg on a New York Times column, it says the Super Bowl promotes war. The Factor from Boston is coming right back.